What's good, people? Izzy Max here, back again, and finally, I've been gone for like 2-3 weeks, but it is time for the MDL Blue power rankings. I know I typed red on this slide, and I'm so glad Matt fixed it. Speaking of, how you doing?
I am good. You're welcome. I'm here to fix all of your mistakes.
I think I've done that on like 4 uploads, and I've like caught it at the last minute. But all right, yep, we're just gonna go through. You're gonna see we're gonna lead off with Burst. The way these are gonna work is basically how we think the season's gonna end. At the bottom, these are the teams that we'll either say we don't think really makes playoffs, or they have a slim chance, and then the top ones, they're already, I think 4 are already guaranteed at this point. Maybe we'll get there.
Something like that. Yeah.
But
It's hard to know exactly. You have to get into a lot of the minutia of calculating how much can somebody drop, who wins what. So even with 2 weeks left, there's
two are locked guaranteed. Yeah,
right. It's just hard to say who exactly can land where, even when it seems kind of obvious that this person's going to be here, this person's probably going to be somewhere over here. So
yep, and we'll definitely get into that. But first one, we're going to just lead off with Burst. After a very good win over me, if Matt doesn't say it, I will. He shit the bed against Goomy, and it wasn't even close. There were some very questionable plays. Also, we're not going to really break down the past week's games, but we will talk about them just because that is the most recent things that we've had. The game was just unfortunate. There was a lot of, I wouldn't even say missed calls, just bad calls. Faking out of Volcanion, even though it's been one of the main max options. AV with Protect, just there was some questionable things. And at this point, I really don't see Burst making playoffs. His last 2 transactions since our last power ranking have been decent. Drapion hasn't came, and Bronzong was just here recently. But Matt, give me the breakdown on Burst.
Yeah, these past few weeks with Burst have been very strange, because in the match against you, I saw maybe a glimmer of hope that he was, perhaps going to overcome the insurmountable task of climbing from the bottom into a wildcard slot. Now I'm really, really not sure. It seems, I think if he did okay against Goomy, I don't think, I think I'd be willing to put him a little bit higher in the rankings, at least 1 slot up, even if he was still at the bottom of the standings. I'd be willing to bump him up a little bit if he did well. But this last match makes me feel more like the match against you was kind of an anomaly. It's very strange to see him go from that kind of play to maybe his worst game of the season here against Goomy. I could tell that he was sort of trying to take to heart some of the stuff that Anthony and I were talking about in our breakdown of his match against you about flow charting and making sure you have a solid game plan. But it felt like that kind of just fell apart. Like he didn't necessarily remember what the right play was against certain leads. Like that's something I always write down, just to make sure I have it. It seemed like his whatever flowchart he had wasn't very robust. Like he may have had a plan against certain leads, but it wasn't really the moves he was planning on making weren't really getting him anywhere. So just to whatever Anthony and I said last time, like your planning and your flowcharting needs to be solid. You can't just have a plan and expect things to go well. And there were this last match he had was it was real bad, man, and it makes me feel more like we bring up sometimes that Burst has these moments where he ends up beating
one of the top people.
One of the top players, even though most of his games don't go that well. And this last game, sort of felt like a reminder that in MDL he seems to be more defined by his losses than maybe a I hate to say it, but more so than a fluke win like that. Um, it it's I don't know. I don't know what to tell him at this point in terms of how to harness what he does in his wins and keep doing that and keep winning. Um, it's a tough spot that he's in, I think.
Yeah, I'll agree. And it's sad because his initial draft was, honestly, it was just bad, and he made some good, solid improvements. And
It's
then,
at least better than it was,
oh,
for
100%. I just don't think he was able to dig himself out of, I think, what he drafted. Because if you look now, it's not a bad draft. I still don't think it's one of the stronger ones.
sure. Yeah.
And I think that might be where some of the struggle comes. But I'm not sure. Moving on, similar record, a little bit better diff, a little bit more consistency. We got Dark at 2-5, -12. Has it been 4 weeks since we've seen a new team?
Yeah, something like that.
So I'm gonna be honest. I helped him build a team, and that was for Goomy. So it's been 4
yeah.
weeks.
So since the last power rankings in this one, we have not seen a new team from him, which is utterly ridiculous.
He was able to pick up a win.
Yeah, well, that was against the one player ranked below him, so that's not terribly surprising. But yeah, I don't know what more I can say. I mean, it feels like he's just not taking the league seriously, and he's
Either that or he's just tremendously busy and probably shouldn't be playing.
Sure, I suppose. I mean, man, even when I've been busy, I've been able to throw together a team in like half an hour, and it's not good, but it's at least different from the week before.
Yeah.
So,
well, because let's take his recent game against Anthony. As soon as Anthony figured out that, oh, hey, this is just the same team, the games went a lot better.
Yeah, it was a pretty safe assumption once, because he was looking at the pace during the match. He knew what pace had been used several times, and when he saw that, oh, everything I'm seeing here is consistent with the pace, I can assume that everything I haven't seen is also consistent with the pace, and that was
at least change up your mon positions. I think they've been the same
Yeah.
in 1 through 6.
Yeah. It's like at least his plays seem okay. His play seems somewhat competent.
And that's the sad part.
Yeah, he could be doing well. He could be building teams every week.
There's a
and
reason
actually,
he finished second in season 1.
Yeah, like he was ranked a little bit lower in the final standings after the regular season there, but he came out swinging and did really well in playoffs. We've all seen him do well, but he has to actually be in it, and he has to actually try. And I just, fuck, man. There's no excuse for what he's been doing.
Yeah, and I think Dark and Burst are just like two sides of the same coin. You got someone who just isn't really trying right now and could probably be a lot better than he is. And Burst, where I think the skill is maybe there, but you might just be in his head too much. He might be in his own head. So he's working too hard, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but
could be.
I'm not sure. These two are the teams me and Matt are both very wary on for their playoff positioning, and we're leaning towards doesn't make it.
Yeah, I'd be very, very shocked if either of them even ended up in the 5th seed.
Yeah. Moving on to probably the 5th seed are these next two teams, and we got Tay, 3-4, -12. One of the coaches that have picked up the most random high tier wins.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Burst picked one up against me, but like Tay is Anthony's only loss and one of Hector's only losses.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and he played well in both of those matches. I like a lot of a lot of Tay's matches have seemed a little bit odd to me. Like we've talked to him in the server. I'm aware that he's like had game plans and whatnot going in, but I said in the pregame that I recorded with Dan that it often feels like he kind of just plops his mons on the field and just clicks attacking moves, um, and there's not really anything. Like, there's not a whole lot of interesting stuff coming out. I think in the matches against Hector and Anthony, he identified some game modes that actually went really well into their teams and played well, and
all based around Hawlucha.
yeah, Hawlucha. That's why we have Hawlucha up here. It's been very instrumental in both of those really big wins. Of course, he has one more win. Just it's been instrumental against the two top players in our division. So, and I think the difference, there's a difference between Tay and Burst, because they're like, Tay has been like, he's been doing okay in some of his matches, even though he's been losing a lot. And then he has these couple of matches where he comes out swinging and beats some high-ranking players.
They don't feel flukish.
Right. The difference, I think, is that a lot of like most of Burst's matches, it feels like his decision-making feels strange. His prep seems strange. I often find myself wondering, like, why are you doing this instead of that? What exactly is this item for? What's this move for? And it doesn't really seem to be coming together. Tay at least seems to have relatively cohesive teams, and he's making plays that make sense. Like, in his losses, he does a little bit better. It's not so much that his wins come out of completely nowhere, you know. There's clearly a difference between how he plays in the Anthony and Hector matches versus his other matches, but the difference isn't as big as most of Burst's matches versus Burst's match against you.
Yeah. No, I agree. And another thing, I think this is the only coach that has never went to game 3. I just realized that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I have hope. I think Tay has a real chance. Now, like you said, not really diving into it, Tay has to win one of his two, and the next coach we're going to see has to lose both of his, and that's going to be Toxic. I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Toxic he's been doing okay. I don't have a tremendous amount of stuff to say here. A lot of his games seem pretty, I guess mostly standard. We've seen a little bit of more interesting stuff coming out in recent weeks from him, but he has a very, very good team. It kind of just does what it's supposed to do, and sometimes he's picking up wins. I think the Goomy match really also helped in my mind to solidify that he's improving quite a bit as a player, because of how we've heard him talk about. We got to hear him talk through his thought process in that game, and it let you know that he was pretty on the ball most of the time, especially when he made that crucial game-losing mistake. I think it was in game 2.
Yeah.
He realized very quickly exactly what his mistake was, exactly what he should have done, exactly how the rest of the game was going to play out if he just did the one thing he was supposed to do.
I think it was as soon as he pressed the button.
Right. Yeah, it was very quick.
Like, he pressed it and, like, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. Like, immediately.
Yeah. It wasn't just like 3 turns later he's like, I think I should have done this other thing. He recognized it immediately, and he knew what all of the consequences of that play would be. So that, and I get that that's just one moment, but it was significant to me.
Has Toxic ever made playoffs? I don't think he has.
I'm not sure. I think he may have been in a wild card match.
Okay.
I off the top of my head I can't remember, but I think he's definitely poised to play in wild card here if he stays where he's at. So
yeah, and like I said, in order for Tay to make it, they are even, but Toxic holds one of the main tiebreakers, which is the head-to-head.
Yeah, and his differential is higher as well,
significantly higher,
which is obviously more important. So
yes. So if Toxic drops both of his, which he's playing two very good people, and Tay can at least pick up one.
Who is the cross division match for Toxic?
You put me on the spot, and I can't tell you. I know it.
Oh, that's Noah. It's Noah.
Okay, and
okay,
Noah's been playing good.
Yeah, sort of. I was more hyped on Noah in the last at week 4 rather than week 8. I think Toxic's got a real shot there. So
yeah, I do as well.
we'll see.
But Tay's not out of it. Toxic right now has a little bit of a head start. And then now we're moving into basically what we're probably going to guarantee is the 1 through 4 at this point. And leading off, we got Goomy. I said this before recording while we were setting these slides up. I've never seen someone try to get a tier 4 to work so hard in my life. This man puts everything on the table that is Avalug. And I love to see it. It's been good. Goomy's been relatively consistent. You see some losses to me and Anthony. Well, you haven't seen us yet, so I guess that makes sense. And Hector. And then he's picking up wins that he should pick up. You know, Johnny, Dark, Toxic, Burst. A very good game. Where he just kind of dominated there. But he's basically been doing what he should be doing. And 4 and 3 plus 9, I think, fits what he's been doing really, really well. Solid gameplay, not really any huge mistakes. If one word I had to use to sum up Goomy's season so far, it's just been solid.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Anything else on this one? I know it's kind of short and we're getting to the higher ones, but Goomy's one of those where you can't really praise for making godlike plays, but you're not going to dog on because he's not really making mistakes either.
Yeah, I think that's extremely fair. And there's less to say, I think, as we get up into the higher ranked people. I think I mentioned this in the last power ranking video, but
other than me.
Right. Well, maybe we'll see when we get there. But yeah, for Goomy, I mean, piggybacking on what you said about the Avalug, he's obviously working very hard to make it work, and it's to his credit, it has worked a couple of times. I think he's maybe bringing it a little bit more often than he should. I think I talked about that in a little bit in his match against you. And I think, like, the only real complaint I have is that his prep doesn't always seem all that optimized. Partially with the Avalug stuff, like, you can only push the Avalug so far. Like, it's a cool mon. It's good in certain matchups. I feel like he's trying to fit it into spaces where it doesn't necessarily belong. And his ability to set Trick Room is a little bit suspect. I think it's maybe a little bit easier now that he has redirection if he's actually going to use a more supportive Togekiss. But it was just a little bit strange. Like, in the match against you, he brought the Runarigus and Wishy-Washy in the back and wasn't really able to get them in position to set up Trick Room and sweep with the Wishy-Washy, so that was a little bit strange. And then, like, the game against Anthony, he saw that Anthony was just going hard into the Dragapult mode, and he didn't have a defensive item on Runarigus to stop it from getting KO'd by the Dragapult, and he just led Runarigus straight out of the gate anyway, which seemed strange to me.
Yeah.
So I think there's some stuff like that he could improve a little bit, but I also don't really have a lot of, like, prep related complaints about his other modes. Like, you know, the Volcanion stuff has been solid.
Tornadus has been great.
Yeah, Torn Volcanion together in particular have been nice. His Grimmsnarl play has been solid. I'd like to see the Vikavolt, or maybe that's something that he can drop, you know, come playoff transaction time. I don't know.
Is that the only mon that hasn't came?
Yeah, we haven't seen it once, which it's a little bit of like his trick room was a little bit awkward because all of his sweepers, except for Wishy-Washy, are weak to fire.
Mm-hmm.
But and Vikavolt, yeah, like the Delmise and the Avalugg work a little bit better. You know, we've seen some modes with those. Vikavolt, I don't know. Maybe he brings it at some point, but seems like a decent slot to switch up when we move into playoffs. But yeah, that's about all I got.
Moving on. This is weird. The only coach in this division that has not picked up a game since our last PRs.
Yeah, that's
granted. I've had the
very
hardest
notable
last 4 weeks, other than the burst. Like I played Anthony and Hector.
Well, see, that's something we talked about last time. This is what I think I'd like to lead with here. Last time when we were on your slide in the power rankings, we talked about how your schedule for the first 4 weeks had not been the hardest, and we also knew that in the upcoming weeks, week 5 and 6, you were going up against the other 2 top players in the division, and that was kind of the test to see if the 4-0 and the number 1 ranked slot was actually where you're at.
Which, granted, those games, if you look, are 0 and -1. they
oh, sure,
flipped,
yeah, they were close. Like, you know, I'm not going to tell you you're at the bottom of the division or anything.
God, no.
Like you're still up here with a solid record and a good differential. So
I have the best differential.
Well, you're tied with Anthony.
Yeah, tied.
But yeah, I that was I don't want to say you failed the test, but you did. I mean, well, with the match against Burst, I'm actually comfortable saying you failed the test.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, it's definitely a little weird to see you know, the 4-0 player after the last power rankings show up here with still the number 4 in the wins column. So obviously you've had some tough matches, and then, you know, we talked about the Burst match. He did strangely well there, and I guess we didn't really get your thoughts on that in the last video, but
Yeah.
what do you think is going on with your current position, and how's your momentum feeling in your own mind?
So I was also the only coach that didn't have a bye week in these, or I was the last coach to get their bye week. And after prepping so hard and actually putting myself through the ringer on top of everything else, like, Matt, you can attest. Yes, I have 3 admins, but I do most of the work when it comes to the doc because nobody fucking updates anything. And I just felt I was getting real burnt out. I told you before the recording started, I could not be happier that I got a bye week. And I was really feeling it, so I didn't honestly try against Burst. If it didn't make it, even though I told Matt to, my Mamoswine set, and then I've realized, man, that's probably a little too far and kind of disrespectful. In hindsight, it would have helped. But yeah, I was just feeling, you felt it. That's why you're not playing this season. I haven't taken a break. Burnout is real. My bye week has helped. I feel great going into these last couple weeks. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and you know, I don't even think you really did that bad against Burst.
No, he just played out of his mind.
Right. Yeah, Anthony kind of touched on that in the last breakdown, but
because like he's never made those switches.
Right.
So I had to.
Right.
I just called it, and it was wrong.
But yeah, I mean, as long as you can maintain, you know, you're up here at the number 3 slot. As long as you can maintain, yeah, you'll be fine.
Yeah, based on everything, like I can't physically fall out of playoffs.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, if something goes wrong,
okay, if I get 8-0'd twice and Toxic can 8-0 the other person twice, which one of his games is against me, like, come on now.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not saying that it's I'm not talking about the possibility of falling into playoffs, but if something goes wrong, you can totally fall into the wild card.
Yeah, I mean that's just
that's all I
Goomy.
was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And your record and differential are well, your record's the same. Differential is very similar. You also have the head-to-head on him, so yeah, we'll see.
Yep. Moving on, Hector, who has been, I want to say, most improved for this season.
I think that's fair. Yeah, he barely missed the wild card slot last time, I believe. Correct?
Yeah, it came down to the last week. But here he sits. This also should be -5 on the Tay game, so just take that into mind.
Oh.
Yeah, he's just been playing solid. Tay, I think, had a solid game plan going in, executed it flawlessly, and Hector really couldn't do anything about it. But other than that, like, he beat me with a minus differential, 2-0'd burst, beat Goomy with a neutral diff, lost to Anthony with a -1, and then swept Dan with a Darmanitan. But other than that, like, he's been just having close games. Other than those two, and then the last two, Toxic, I would say, was relatively close because of a crit, but he's winning games. The two losses he's had, one was to Anthony, and the other one, Tay just had a really, really solid game plan. So I think he is deserving of this of number 2. I think his last couple weeks are difficult. He plays number 1 on the other side. So we'll see where he falls, but he's one of the two that are just guaranteed locked for playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think that his he may have had the best transactions this season.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who else had like really, really solid transactions, but his have just been extremely good. I think picking up the Moltres when
and won games.
Yeah, well, I mean that's one transaction. Hector's had quite a few very good ones. The picking up the Moltres when you already have the Comfy, I think, is great, and the getting rid of Togekiss is probably not that big of a deal because you have 2 redirectors still anyway. The
and you
Duraludon pickup was very big.
You laughed at when I said, just drop Togedemaru for Pikachu. You laughed at me.
I don't know if that's true.
Matt, that is true. You can go back. You laughed at me. Because I was like, oh yeah, he can just have 3 redirectors. You go, oh, that's not necessary. And then he done the Moltres thing.
We can go back and check, sure, but I talked to him about the Pikachu transaction, so I'd be surprised if that was the case.
Oh, man.
But, yeah, his transactions have been great. He's been showing up with really solid game plans. He's been turning a lot of his mons into real big threats. Even Darmanitan. Yeah, he's just been blowing some shit up and playing well.
One funny thing, and just looking at this bottom transaction, Sandaconda. On the other side, Sandaconda's doing really, really good. And on this side, where we have honestly better steel types, because the only real steel type on that side is Celesteela. And Melmetal, but Melmetal's over here as well. Sandaconda's not doing anything.
The Melmetal in red is a little bit more significant, but yeah.
Well, yeah, 100%. But, like, this Sandaconda hasn't done jack.
It makes sense. I mean, he's got another ground type already. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't normally expect Sandaconda to get a lot of play anyway. Johnny's just insane.
Johnny's that guy.
Yeah. But I mean, the Impidimp I think is a great pickup as well.
Yeah.
It just adds some extra, crazy prankster shenanigan modes, whereas your Sandaconda was not really doing anything. So
now,
I'm down with that.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Impidimp does not have screens.
No, it does not. Its move pool is very limited. You know, it's got like fake out, taunt, fake tears, thunder wave, trick. I think that's about it.
Okay. I didn't know where the line was
here.
From Impidimp to Grimmsnarl, or Impidimp to Morgrim. But all right, moving on to our number one person. Only loss being Tay, Anthony with a +11, tied with me for the best differential. No transactions since the last PRs. I don't really think he's needed them. This team is very cut and dry and glued together. He has his modes. I think like the only real flex slot is the Impidimp and the Mr. Mime. Or the Impidimp, the Greedent and the Mr. Mime. Everything else serves a role and has its purpose. But his play's just been phenomenal, stellar, not really anything to scoff at. His closest games were Hector, me, and then his loss to Tay. Well, Charles. Charles was a good game. That was an interesting game, but that was early on in the season. So
that's still, it might be one of my.
It was
one of my favorite games of the season.
It was such a good game. But there's really not much to say about Anthony. You know, we've talked a little bit about the other couple of top coaches, but Anthony's just performing well. Other than the loss to Tay, but you know, we have those.
Yeah, like I said, it's hard. It's easier to talk more and get nitpicky when somebody's doing a bunch of stuff wrong.
Yeah.
With Anthony, it's just like he's got all these really solid modes that have like some good synergy with each other, and he seems to know when to bring what. And one thing I'll say about all these different modes here is that I think his matches against you and against Goomy really highlighted how you have to really, really prep for every single mode. You can't just bank on him bringing this or not bringing that, because you prepped pretty hard for the Dragapult and
got fucked by the Barraskewda.
Right, his most successful one there was the Barraskewda, and then Goomy didn't really pay that much attention to the Dragapult at all, and the Dragapult was the star against him. Mm-hmm. So
the hard thing is, and Goomy can probably attest to this, so Goomy, if you're watching, put this in the Discord, it's hard to prep for both. It really is.
Of
because
course.
You know, like, I knew what other 5 was coming. I nailed that down to a T and what they would be doing.
Yeah, look, I'm not gonna tell you it's easy, but if for everyone listening, for everyone who still has yet to play Anthony, everyone who may play Anthony in playoffs, whatever, you have to prep for everything. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy, but to measure up to the top player in the division, you have to be able to do it. And if you think you can't, then you gotta try harder, or you gotta use the last pre-playoff transaction to fix your draft. That's about all I have to say. You gotta prep for everything.
Yes, and I'll kind of go back on my point. Dragapult, Barraskewda, yeah, both physical sweepers. They do totally different things, even though they're both physical sweepers.
Absolutely, yeah.
You cannot prep for one and prep for the other in a vacuum. Like, do it, try to. But with the other 5 that you probably know is coming, it's really difficult. So,
right, you can't just hard prep for one and assume you'll be okay against the other.
Yep.
You have to actually prep for both at the same time.
Me and Goomy are good examples of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's gonna do it for us. That's everybody. Kind of running it backwards. Anthony and Hector guaranteed in the playoffs. Not even gonna touch wild card. Me and Goomy right now are fighting to stay out of that wild card slot. Toxic and Tay fighting to get into that wild card slot. And we think Dark and Burst are just kind of out of it. Can pull some upsets to mess with standings, but we don't think they're going to make it. Did I cover that about right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
2, 2, 2, and 2. Yeah, that's 8. Yeah. So,
yep.
Any last words before I shut it off?
Not much. Just good luck going into the last couple of weeks, everybody, and good luck. Have fun.
Yep. So next week will be me and Matt's final episode together, just the two of us. And then the last week will be all 4 of us kind of breaking down the games. It'll be chaotic and hectic, and then we'll be talking about standings. Then we'll take a week off because we're not going to break down just 2 games for wildcards. Those will get lumped into the first round of playoffs. But other than that, transactions will happen before wildcard. So our wildcard people will be able to make a transaction.
We're doing that this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in case, like, if you just want to make it into playoffs, you can make a wild card. You can make a transaction to at least make it out of the wild card. But just figured we'd change it up a little bit. But other than that, good luck, you guys. Good season so far. Let's finish it off strong, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.